Welcome to Light Boxes, a football show. I'm your host, Rob Ballantine. My goal on this channel is to help you think outside the box as an NFL fan. And today, we're going to do some thinking about the AFC North. Really interesting division with a lot of storylines, particularly driven by the quarterback position. Can Lamar Jackson get the Ravens over the hump? Can Joe Burrow have a good enough defense to support him? The Browns are always an endless curiosity factory of their quarterback position. And of course, Aaron Rodgers is a Steeler now. But we're going to talk about that and so much more. So let's dive in to the AFC North. Looking at the odds for the AFC North, and we can see the Baltimore Ravens have a strong lead in the clubhouse. They have minus odds to go over 11 and a half wins, and they have the second best odds in the NFL to make the playoffs. They don't have a stranglehold on the division. Minus 155, definitely the favorites, but not by a huge margin, with the Bengals near enough at plus 260 that the books are giving them a legitimate chance to win the AFC North. The Pittsburgh Steelers have an 8.5 win total with minus 105 odds, so that is pretty much a coin flip whether they have another winning season or the first losing season in Mike Tomlin's coaching career. So, really interested to see how that one plays out. And of course, the Cleveland Browns, not a very good team. Worst odds to make the playoffs at plus 880. But I think they'll have some moments of success. We'll talk about them a little later, but that's the big picture about the AFC North. The AFC North plays the entire AFC East, which is regarded as one of the easier divisions to play, but also the NFC North, which is definitely one of the harder ones. So that balances itself out pretty much. The Ravens finished first last year, and the Bengals finished third in the division. So that determines who their unique opponents are. But on my previous division breakdowns, I've already said that the Jaguars, Cardinals, and Broncos are three of the better challengers to knock off the Texans, the Rams, and the Chiefs in those respective divisions. So unfortunately for Bengals fans, I don't think their schedule is markedly easier than that of the Ravens. Now, before we tackle the first team, if you're enjoying my content, it would mean the world to me if you hit the thumbs up button and you hit subscribe to the channel. Those things help this channel grow and get my content out to more NFL fans like you. So I'd really appreciate it. On to the Browns. Cleveland was a dumpster fire last year, and they're not projected to be a ton better this year. And so, in a lot of ways, it puts GM Andrew Berry and head coach Kevin Stefanski on the hot seat. I'm actually kind of surprised that they've gotten to year 6. I believe in them, especially Stefanski, but this ownership isn't one that I would regard as extremely stable or forward thinking. And so the fact that they've stuck with this group for this long, that's a good thing. I am sort of surprised by the long-term commitment they've made. But it also means that we could be reaching the end of the road if things aren't turned around pretty quickly. OC Tommy Rees was promoted from passing game coordinator last year, but he won't be calling the plays. That is going back to Kevin Stefanski after he relinquished it for a little bit of last year. That's part of why the offense felt so bad. So I think with Stefanski calling the plays again from the jump, that should be a good thing for Cleveland's offense. But dreadful quarterback play in 2024 was the main reason the offense was so terrible. And I just don't think that the 2025 quarterback situation in Cleveland is nearly as bad. It's often talked about as one of the worst two, if not the worst, in the league. But I think Joe Flacco, while he looked pretty bad in Indianapolis last year, he's familiar with Kevin Stefanski. They have a good rapport. I think he'll be a serviceable starter for them. And Dylan Gabriel and Shadur Sanders, one of them should be able to play well enough. If you compare that to Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Bailey Zappi getting starts last year, plus, of course, the travesty that was Deshaun Watson's play, and then the up and down, very fun roller coaster of Jameis Winston, this quarterback situation is much better than that. It's not top 20. Don't get me wrong. This is not a competitive quarterback room, but it's a much more serviceable quarterback room than it has been over the last couple of years. And with Kevin Stefanski calling the plays and coaching them up, I don't think it's just going to drag this entire team down. They still won't be very competitive, but it's not going to be a laughing stock like many people are wondering it could be. Now, I wouldn't say I'm a big believer in the defense returning to the form it displayed in 2023 when they were a surprise playoff team. That was Jim Schwartz's first year as defensive coordinator, and Jim Schwartz had an aggressive man coverage style of defense that sort of took opponents by surprise at that time. That element of surprise is gone now, and talent-wise, they do not have Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah or Martin Emerson on the back end. And aside from Myles Garrett, who's great, they have a rookie starting defensive tackle in Mason Graham. I believe in him in general, but expecting him to be an impact player right away is tough. And their other edges are Alex Wright or Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. There isn't much to play off of Myles Garrett, and teams are just going to focus all their energy on him without other players likely being able to pay that off very well. So I don't see this team getting back to the kind of defensive prowess it had a couple of years ago, at least not yet. The Browns aren't playing really for 2025, though. They're playing to be better in 2026, and that is very true for Greg Newsome II, one of their cornerbacks. I'm really interested to watch how his contract year goes. He was drafted in the first round in 2021, and the Browns did exercise his fifth-year option, so he's playing on the final year of his rookie deal right now. He had a good first 3 years of his career, really bad year last year, but the entire defensive ecosystem was pretty bad last year. I don't think that the defense is going to jump up to top 10, but if it gets back to average, and Newsome is a reason why, if he becomes a good player, he's going to make himself some money, either with the Browns or on the free agency market. I don't really see the Browns being in a position where they would franchise tag Newsome. That seems unlikely. So it's whether he wants to stay in Cleveland or not, but he has to play well enough to earn a contract first. So I'm really interested to watch him and his development throughout this year and see if he can really earn that trust as their CB2 next to Denzel Ward. My favorite draft pick of the Browns was running back Dylan Sampson from Tennessee in the fourth round. This was actually the second running back that the Browns took. They took Quinshaw Judkins in the early second round. I liked Judkins better as a prospect back during draft season. Obviously, the opinions of Judkins have soured quite a bit since his off-field issues. I'm not going to be the source for those. Go read up on them if you're interested. But I loved the Sampson pick too, and I thought he was an extreme value that late in the draft. Sampson has a great combination of being not yet 21 years old, one of the youngest prospects in the draft, yet displayed way better vision than you'd expect, especially for a player that age. So I think that that's a good combo that bodes well for his projection in the NFL. When watching Sampson, I think it's an interesting dichotomy between the forward power he generates. When he meets a tackler head on, he usually doesn't give up ground, but then a contrast with the lateral power he doesn't really display. He has lateral cutting ability, but when he gets hit from the side, I feel like he just absolutely caroms away like a pinball. And so that's interesting. That's part of why he wasn't such a highly rated prospect and why he fell to the fourth round. He doesn't have that sturdy build when he's getting hit from the side. But if he can improve upon that, if he can strengthen his base as he gets older, he could be a lethal running back because he has breakaway speed to pay off good blocking with home runs. I kind of see a James Cook comparison. In a sense, that's kind of the arc I would see for him. And if the Browns are getting that from a guy they got in the fourth round, that was an excellent, excellent pick. For each team, I'll highlight what I call the fulcrum. The fulcrum is the person or unit of a team that will most determine their success or failure in 2025. The fulcrum for the Browns is head coach Kevin Stefanski. He's got a lot on his plate. He has to handle a lot of outside noise about their quarterback position, particularly Shedeur Sanders. People want him to play. There's a lot of fans of his out there, and there's a lot of intrigue. But he's also just got to instill hope into a team with less roster talent than most. And he's got to call one hell of an offense. He's got to mitigate the limited skill sets of the quarterbacks on his team. Even if I think they'll be decent, those quarterbacks are definitely not ceiling raisers. So Kevin Stefanski must be a ceiling raiser as a play caller. It could be a hot seat year for him, but the fact that he's made it to year 6 means that the ownership group trusts in him and his staff enough. And maybe there's a world in which he can really squeeze blood from a stone here and get a decent team out of what looks like a cellar dweller on paper. With a win total of 4.5, I got the Browns going over. And that's not a hard pick since the line is minus 140 for that. The books are saying you got to bet $14 to win $10. They're saying it's not even odds. They predict over. 4 is just so few wins. And I know this team had 3 wins last year, but Prior to that, Kevin Stefanski had never had a season with fewer than 7 wins for this team. So I don't think seven's that realistic, but 5 or 6, clearing that 4.5 win mark, that feels right to me. So this Browns team, while bad, won't be just totally embarrassing in my eyes, and they'll win a couple more games than you'd expect. Moving on to the three playoff contenders in this division, and starting it off with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin enters year 19 as the head coach of this club, and as it's widely known, he has never had a losing season. He's had an 8-8 season or two, but never a season with a losing record. Omar Khan is in his 4th year as general manager, but he's been with the Steelers organization since 2001. So there's a ton of continuity and a ton of stability. And Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback now. So with that comes inherent instability. It throws things into flux. Obviously, that's the biggest talking point about the Steelers, but let's dig into some other things first before we cover Rodgers. I believe heavily in the Steelers being able to weaponize 13 personnel. If you're not familiar with personnel groupings, they tell you how many running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends will be on the field. The first digit is the number of running backs, the second digit is the number of tight ends, and then the remaining available will be wide receivers. So that's just implied. 13 personnel means 1 running back and 3 tight ends, therefore with only 1 receiver on the field. The most common personnel grouping for most teams is 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end, and then 3 wide receivers, because that allows you to spread the ball out in the passing game. 13 personnel, though, is great if you have 3 capable tight ends who are still threats to receive the ball, because they will maul people in the run game. You're getting a size advantage against the defense that way. The 3 tight ends at Pittsburgh's disposal, you've got Darnell Washington, who's massive. You've got Jonnu Smith, who had over 100 targets last year and is a nice, versatile receiving weapon. And then in the middle of them is Pat Freiermuth, bigger than Jonnu Smith, a better blocker, but also more nimble than Darnell Washington. So the way we can use all 3 of those players, and the way I expect OC Arthur Smith to do that, will be nice and creative. So I love the idea of them using a lot more 13 personnel than most teams do. I also want them to use a ton of 13 personnel because I would like them to have 1 wide receiver on the field as often as possible, because the room behind DK Metcalf is really thin on talent. The other starters right now are Calvin Austin and Robert Woods. Not players who are really moving the needle for me. I want to believe in Roman Wilson if he can have a healthy second year. That was a prospect I liked coming out of Michigan, but Aaron Rodgers isn't necessarily the best for developing young wide receivers. And that's another qualm I have in general with this wide receiver room, is its fit with Aaron Rodgers. Like I said, him developing young wide receivers like Wilson, it's not likely in the cards. But also DK Metcalf, their star receiver, he's not really known for accurate route running and being on the exact landmarks he needs to be. And that's exactly the type of player that Aaron Rodgers demands. He wants that synchronicity and all of that accuracy in the route running and in the details. So I'm worried about friction there. I also think that Robert Woods might be able to be where Aaron Rodgers wants, but it's going to look a lot like Randall Cobb late into his career, where he could be where Rodgers needed him to be, but he didn't have any explosive juice anymore to raise the ceiling of the offense once he had the ball. So pretty worried about how this passing game will look, how this wide receiver room is built, and how it fits with Rodgers. I'll be really fascinated to watch whether the age cliff comes for their 2 veteran cornerbacks, Darius Slay, who's already 34, and Jalen Ramsey, who they traded for and will turn 31 during this season. The age cliff doesn't always come for cornerbacks in their early 30s, but more often than not it does. Cornerback is a position that traditionally falls off earlier than others, simply because it relies the most on quick twitch athleticism, which is the first thing to go. Now, it's not that the defense will be bad even if the cliff comes for one or both of these players in 2025. The defensive line is sick. There's still Joey Porter as a young cornerback that you can feel good about. Patrick Queen as a linebacker. There's plenty of good on this defense, but the ceiling for it is stupid high if Ramsey and Slay can still play at the level they did last year. So we'll have to see. Father Time tends to be particularly vindictive towards the cornerback position. But if both these players are even at 90% of their level still in their early 30s, Steelers defense will be gnarly. My favorite draft pick of the Steelers was Derek Harmon in the late first round. They've been looking for their next interior defensive presence to take the mantle from Cam Hayward. Cam Hayward's having a bit of a contract dispute right now. I expect that contract to get done. He wants to be a Steeler for life. The Steelers want him there, and they want him mentoring Harmon. The Steelers did draft Keanu Benton a couple of years ago in the second round, hoping that he would become the successor to Hayward whenever Hayward's play falls off, which maybe never. He's been playing great into his mid and late 30s, but it's probably going to be Harmon. The flashes are there with Benton, but I just think the upside of Harmon as a pass rusher could make him a lethal force, especially because teams still have to scheme against TJ Watt predominantly on the edge. So it's going to give opportunities for Harmon to make an impact as a rookie, but even more importantly, be the natural successor to Hayward to hold down the interior. The fulcrum for the Steelers would obviously be Aaron Rodgers, but this ties into it. It's the play of both of their young tackles, Broderick Jones on the left side and Troy Fautanu on the right. They were taken in the first round in consecutive years, 2023 and 2024 respectively, and they both need to protect Rodgers. When you have a quarterback like Rodgers who isn't very mobile, I would say is almost immobile at this point, edge pressure is even more lethal against that type of quarterback. And so you need these tackles to be really plus pass protectors in order for Rodgers to have a clean pocket. If Rodgers can't trust the edges of his line, I don't see him hanging in the pocket and making the kind of throws that will allow this offense to be very good. But if these two players who showed immense talent in college can put it all together, if Fautanu in particular can be healthy, and if Broderick Jones can kind of keep his head on straight, both of these players could be the bookends that Rodgers needs to be successful. With Mike Tomlin's no losing seasons record on the line, I'm going to give the Steelers the over on 8.5 wins. And here's why. Go with me on this, but you remember that scene in The Princess Bride where Wesley has been revived, but his body doesn't work yet. And so Fezzik is carrying him around, and Inigo is there helping him out too. And the three of them have to get past 50 guards outside the gate. But they figure out a plan. They come up with the Dread Pirate Roberts ruse, and it's able to get most of the guards to run away scared, and they get the last guard to fork over the key. Aaron Rodgers is clearly Wesley in this metaphor. His body doesn't work anymore. There's nothing there from a physical standpoint. But the mental sharpness should still be there. And I think with the right infrastructure, with your Fezzik, with your Inigo helping you out, he's going to be able to win some games. And they're going to be able to prey on the dysfunction of some teams. Now, plenty of teams won't run away scared like those guards did. But the Steelers always have a knack for getting you to play at your worst, picking at your weak points, preying on your dysfunction. And so if they can do that enough times against enough opponents, they will win 9 games, maybe 10, and clear that bar. I don't see them as a playoff team. Even if they make it, I think they're out in the first round, like they always are. But I do think that this team gets another winning season. I don't think Aaron Rodgers' theatrics tear that down. And in fact, I think they replicate that moment in The Princess Bride and get Mike Tomlin yet another winning season. The Cincinnati Bengals are up next, and they are the inverse of the Steelers. Whereas the Steelers have a really strong defense but question marks on offense, the Bengals have an awesome offense and a kind of suspect defense. The biggest change, though, is they switched defensive coordinators. They're bringing in Al Golden, who used to be on the Bengals staff, but then was with Notre Dame as their defensive coordinator, and Notre Dame made the college football championship last year. So they're hoping him coming back, having familiarity with the building, but also an ability to work with younger players in a way that they think will be better than Lou Anarumo, their last defensive coordinator. That's one of the biggest gambles they're making. Zach Taylor, as their head coach, for many fans, it's kind of put up or shut up time. I think he's done a good job of managing this team. They did appear in a Super Bowl, and it's not like you can just give him zero credit for that. I think that the offense has evolved slowly and surely throughout his tenure. he's just got to be a better game manager. That's the biggest thing. If they lose some games because he was an idiot with clock management or situational football, then I could see him getting the axe after year 7. But as you can see with their GM, Duke Tobin, this ownership group likes to keep their people in the fold for as long as possible. So I don't think Zach Taylor gets fired unless it's an absolutely catastrophic year. Getting back to talking about that defense, I do believe in what this cornerback room can be. They haven't put it together yet, and this defense in general has been dreadful, so we often think of their cornerbacks as a complete liability. Cam Taylor-Britt has some moments where he's getting too penalized and too grabby and too pushy, for sure. But I think there's talent there, and we've seen high points from Cam Taylor-Britt in his Bengals career. DJ Turner is a burner on the other side. He has the speed to hang with anybody, and injuries have plagued him, but I like him as their other outside corner, and you have Dax Hill in the slot. It's been an up and down beginning of Dax Hill's career. He wasn't necessarily a great fit for safety with them, but there's so much promise for him as a nickel corner. Now, again, it hasn't all come together for any of these players, but I also just don't count them out. I think that if these 3 players get better coaching from Golden and they're all healthy, this could be a top half of the league cornerback room, which would surprise a lot of people. I can't say I have the same level of belief in their edge talent on this team, and that even includes Trey Hendrickson, their star pass rusher. He's going through a contract dispute right now, and part of the reason the Bengals don't want to pay him is because of his age, but another reason is because he's not that good a run stopper. He's really just a sack artist, and he's a really brilliant sack artist. But he led the league in sacks last year, yet the defense wasn't any good. So it's not correlative that him getting so many sacks is leading to good defense. That's not all on him. There's also depth issues. I don't really believe in Joseph Osai. I believe less in Myles Murphy. And their first round pick, Shamar Stewart from this year, is an edge player who can set the edge against the run, but he's not much of a pass rusher. And because of that, I thought 17th overall was a bit of a reach. So big question marks about how that unit can rush the passer and stop the run and do everything you need to have a holistically good defense. I'm really intrigued to see if wide receiver Andre Yoshibas can become their true wide receiver 3. His development is critical for opening things up for this offense. Of course, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are more than enough. They're a king's ransom at wide receiver. And Mike Gesicki is a perfectly serviceable third option as their tight end 1. But Yoshibas would bring a different skill set, and if he can become a real wide receiver 3, that just helps take this offense from being clearly top 10 to probably top 2 or 1. There's nobody else on the roster I see doing it. Jermaine Burton has all of the talents in the world, but his career is on life support, not only because he's a knucklehead, but because he's experiencing a minor camp injury, so he doesn't even have time on task to develop right now. Charlie Jones is just a punt returner, and there's nobody else on this roster that I think would have a chance to be that serviceable wide receiver 3 to complement Jamar and T. I do believe in Andre Yoshivas, so hopefully he can do it. The most important draft pick that the Bengals made was taking Dylan Fairchild, a guard out of Georgia, in the 3rd round. Interior offensive line play has been a big issue for these Bengals, and quarterback Joe Burrow always makes it work, but it sure would be nice to have some security and some better talent up front. Unfortunately, the other guard spot and the center are still question marks on this team, and Dylan Fairchild is a rookie, so it's going to take him some time, but it's a step in the right direction for giving Joe a clean pocket more often. And Dylan Fairchild's an ass kicker. I love the new tone that he'll help this offensive line set. And if you go back and watch Georgia tape, Tate Ratledge got picked before Fairchild. He went to Detroit, and he's got the big mullet and the mustache, and people think of him as more of the ass kicker. I think Fairchild played with more violence and did more to set the tone for that line. So I hope he brings that to the Bengals right away, and as his level of play starts to develop, he should be a building block for this offense. The fulcrum for the Cincinnati Bengals is clearly defensive coordinator Al Golden. They need to go from having a bottom 5 defense to having a league average one, and they didn't improve the talent by that much on the roster. They are hoping that a completely different scheme and a completely different way of teaching defense is going to unlock it to a level that will support the offense. Again, it does not have to be an elite unit. I don't think there's any path for it to be. But with Joe Burrow and the elite offense, you just need a defense that'll get you by. Al Golden is coming in with a different approach, having that college experience, being willing to simplify things and allow younger players to just pin their ear back and make one or two reads. Lou Anarumo, the former defensive coordinator's defense, is the opposite. He wants veterans who can run all of these complex disguised coverages. And while that's probably a higher ceiling of defense, that wasn't going to fit this roster. And that's definitely the signal that the Bengals are sending us with this hire. So that working out is the biggest deal for the 2025 Cincinnati Bengals. With a win total of 9.5, I give the Cincinnati Bengals the over. Usually they start the year off terribly and have to play catch up. They go 0-2 and then end up 9-8. But usually they go 0-2 or 0-3 because they have a disjointed offseason. Joe Burrow is always recovering from something, or a wide receiver is in a contract holdout. And these things make it so that they can't get out the gates running. This year, knock on wood, but everything is going smoothly right now. Joe Burrow is healthy. Both the wide receivers are paid. The new defensive coordinator is in there teaching the system. I think there will still be some hiccups with the defense early on, but if the offense just comes out firing on all cylinders, they probably won't start the season as poorly. Then you can easily get to 10 or 11 wins with this team. When you have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow throwing them the ball, they should be able to do it. The Baltimore Ravens are up, the two-time defending AFC North champs and the favorites to do it again. Now, they have a lot of similarities structurally to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their head coach has been in the fold for almost 2 decades. Their GM, while only in a single-digit number of years in that role, has been with the organization forever. Eric DeCosta was hired in 1996 and is still with the Ravens. So a lot of similarities there. I like the coordinators of the Ravens a lot. Zach Orr's defense showed a ton of improvement on the back half of last year, and Todd Monken has really unlocked the best version of Lamar Jackson. But Todd Monken's offense really leveled up when they signed running back Derrick Henry last year, and despite being in his 30s, I will not be betting against Derrick Henry falling off yet. And until I see it, I believe in Derrick Henry remaining King Henry. We got to start thinking of Derrick Henry like we think of LeBron James, just with the physical imposition that he places on the opponent and the way that they take care of their bodies. Derrick Henry is notable for his diet and his exercise routine. I don't know the dollar amount he puts into his body, but LeBron is quoted as saying he spends $1 million per year investing in his own health and strength and conditioning. I would not be surprised if there's some sort of similar number. He doesn't have the same wealth as LeBron, but a commensurate amount that he's putting into his body, that being Derrick Henry as well. So until we see the cliff, I'm not going to bet that Henry's going over it. I think he's going to continue to be an engine for Baltimore's offense. Offensively speaking, though, I don't believe in the choice to make Cooper Rush the backup quarterback behind Lamar Jackson. And I know that's nitpicky and it's such a small detail. Why would it matter? I do think it matters, but mostly it's a reflection of how hard it was to find anything wrong with this team, anything I truly don't believe in. This is a legitimate Super Bowl contender and they don't have many weak points. But the reason it matters is because home field advantage matters. And Lamar hasn't always had healthy seasons. 2023 and 2024 were, but 2021 and 2022 were cut short by injury, and backups had to play multiple games. If that happens again in 2025, if he's missing 3 or 4 or 5 games at any point during the season, I don't love Cooper Rush coming in and being the backup. I think it's a weird fit stylistically. I would rather have a backup with some similar athleticism to Lamar Jackson than having kind of a pocket quarterback where you're going to have to change everything schematically if he comes in. And again, they want home field advantage. They want to make their playoff opponents, presumably the Chiefs or the Bills, come into their building. Those margins matter for contenders at this level. So don't love this backup quarterback position. I hope Lamar stays healthy the whole year. Interior defensive lineman Travis Jones is entering the final year of his rookie deal, and I'll be watching how he plays this year with a ton of interest. The Ravens already pay a ton for another interior defender, Nnamdi Madubuike. He's the fourth highest paid defensive tackle in the league. And if Jones plays well enough this year, it might cost a pretty penny to keep him. Now, Jones and Madubuike work well off of each other. Their skill sets complement one another, and the team could pay both. But then we'd be getting into the territory that I mentioned in the New England Patriots section of the AFC East video, where they spend a high percentage of their cap space on just two defensive tackles, and whether or not that is a smart team building approach. I'll be interested to see what the Ravens think. They could go the way of the Patriots, or they could go the way of the Eagles. The Eagles were actually the ones who let Milton Williams walk to the Patriots. They decided not to pay Milton Williams because they know they're going to have to pay a ton for Jalen Carter, who's their main anchor along the interior. His rookie deal is still going on right now, but eventually they have to spend money there, and they didn't want to spend money on both Carter and Williams. So how the Ravens conceive of their interior defensive line and how they allocate their money will be really interesting to see at the end of this year. But it all depends on Travis Jones playing well enough to earn a big contract first. My favorite rookie addition to the Ravens is Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia. Complete steal that he fell to 26. The Ravens always do that. They got a fantastic cerebral player. I really wanted to see what the Ravens defense looked like if Ardarius Washington was healthy. It's such a bummer that he is out for the year with an injury he sustained this offseason. And of course, Kyle Hamilton, and then Starks in three safety looks, and what that would do to free up Hamilton. Even without Washington in there, I still think Starks is a really valuable player. He's still going to allow Kyle Hamilton to free roam occasionally because Starks has the ability to play center field well enough. And I just think that Starks and Hamilton is still one of the more intimidating safety duos in the league. So love this addition for them. He should make an impact pretty early for this team. The fulcrum for the Baltimore Ravens is their rookie kicker, Tyler Loop. Just like that discussion about backup quarterback earlier, it may seem ridiculous to say a team's hopes hinge upon their kicker. But with real Super Bowl contenders, the margins are just that much thinner. And we've seen missed kicks be the difference for a really good team not advancing in the playoffs. For the Ravens, they handled the dismissal of Justin Tucker pretty embarrassingly, to be honest. If you're not aware of the story, Justin Tucker had many well-founded sexual assault allegations against him. He played extremely poorly compared to his previously Hall of Fame standard of kicking in the 2024 season. But the Ravens stuck with him because he was their guy. And then when it was time to get rid of him this offseason, they claimed it was a completely football decision, which is insane. And it's just, it's disrespectful to the victims of Justin Tucker's actions. Should have cut him much earlier. And even when they cut him, they didn't need to make it seem like, well, Justin Tucker's still one of us, and we just needed to move on to get better kicking play. Now, analyzing karma isn't really valid, so I'm not saying that bad karma is going to befall Tyler Loop, but they draft this kicker in the 6th round, and he's had an up and down camp already, and he still has to fill the kicking shoes of Justin Tucker, even if, he left in disgrace. So there's a lot of pressure on Tyler Loop, and there's a lot of pressure on the Baltimore Ravens, and if the kicking isn't up to snuff, I could see it being an issue for the Ravens. With all that said, it was really hard for me to find any glaring flaws in the Baltimore Ravens, so I'll have them going over their 11.5 win total, and they're going to win the AFC North again. It's just hard to bet against Lamar Jackson. He is way too good of a quarterback. And keep in mind, he didn't win the MVP award last year, and he was, not only from an analytical perspective, but a narrative perspective, just as valid a candidate as Josh Allen. I'm not stoking that debate. It's not that I think Lamar deserved it over Josh, but you know who thinks Lamar deserved it more? Lamar. I bet he's going to come out throwing gas, trying to remind everybody that he believes he's the best quarterback in the league. So they're going to be good. They have too many sound parts of their roster and of their staff for me to believe in some kind of fall off coming. So as long as they're healthy, they're winning the division. And that's the AFC North preview. You may have noticed I picked all four teams to go over their win total. I'm fine with that. Keep in mind, this division had four teams with winning records 2 years ago. That won't happen again. The Browns are still not a strong team, but they just have to clear 4.5 wins, and I think they can do that. The Steelers have had winning records with worse quarterback play than what I expect Rodgers to give them. And even if Aaron Rodgers has some egomania, I think the Steelers are one of the better organizations to be insulated from the worst of it. The Bengals, too strong in offense, even if the defense has question marks. And the Ravens, too strong overall. So I do think that every team in this division goes over and that they're all watchable, each in their own way. And I want to thank you for watching this video. It means a lot that you're still here. Please, again, hit like and hit subscribe. Those things help get more of my content out to NFL fans just like you. So it would mean the world to me. Next week, we're doing the NFC North, and then we're done with the divisional previews, and we'll see what's on the horizon for this channel after that. But again, thank you so much for being here. This is Light Boxes. I'm Rob Ballantine, and I'll see you soon.